Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Huck. Today we are talking about my autumn DNFs. So these are the books that I started and then decided not to finish during the autumn months, which I am counting as September, October, and November. So I have 8 books to talk to you about today. And we will just go in the order that I read them. And as always, some of these I have more elaborate reasons why I DNF'd them, and some of them I just kind of went like, not for me. So yeah, let's just get started with the first book that I DNF'd in September, which was Miranda and Caliban by Jacqueline Carey. I buddy read this with Kara. We both DNF'd it. So this is a standalone adult fantasy retelling of The Tempest. And in it we are following Miranda. We start out with her from a pretty young age. I think she's about 6 or 7 when the book starts, and then the book kind of follows her as she ages. She's growing up on this island, isolated. It's pretty much just her and her father, Prospero, who is really the worst. Like, the way he raises her is very much, he just like controls her, shames her, manipulates her, abuses her, and has pretty much raised her, convincing her that like he can do no wrong. Everything that he does is correct and the most moral and the best, and he always knows best, and that she doesn't know anything. And then while they're there, they also encounter Caliban, who is this boy who lives on the island, and Prospero essentially decides that he wants to like capture Caliban and like civilize him. And he's doing that alongside some other real like shady experiments that Prospero is doing. So yeah, Prospero's kind of the worst. And then we're reading from Miranda's perspective, and I just really did not enjoy Miranda as a character or as a perspective to read from. She just has very little personality and very little agency in the story, really, of all the characters. Like, Prospero is the only character who has any agency in the story, which he completely just uses to like abuse these children. Like, that's the story. And Miranda as a character really doesn't have much personality. She's very passive in the story, and like, I understand that there are reasons why that is because of the way she was raised and how he's controlling her and how he's raised her and like all of this. That makes sense. But I just really didn't enjoy reading from her perspective. And I also read some reviews of this to kind of see if like, as she grows up, does that change at all? And it really didn't seem like it did change. And so I was like, I'm not really sure why I'm reading this book, because there wasn't much of a plot. There also was this real feeling of distance from the characters, so it was very hard to feel connected to them and really care about what was happening. And I was like, so there isn't much of a plot, I don't enjoy these characters, and there's just like the most prominent character is just this incredibly insufferable character of Prospero, and it's just a story about like Miranda and Caliban suffering. It just was like very unpleasant to read and also really boring. So yeah, that's most of why I DNF'd this book. The next book that I DNF'd in September was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a sci-fi thriller that is following a man who is a professor. He's happily married and has a child, but he also has like in the back of his mind this kind of what if, because at one point in his life there had been this possibility that he would become like this hotshot scientist or something, but he ended up getting married and having a child and like going down a different career path. So there is that little bit of like what if in his mind. One day he gets abducted, and when he is released and gets back out into the world, he finds that his life is different. He never married his wife, his child doesn't exist, and he is living this life as that like hotshot scientist and not as a professor. And so then he is trying to figure out like what happened to his wife, and you know, what is reality? Like, are his memories real, or is this reality that he's experiencing now real? So I originally picked this up because I had seen one or two people compare it to say, like, if you liked Middle Game by Shauna Maguire, you might also like this. Not that they're the same, but that it would probably appeal to the similar people. Also because it does deal with memory, which is a theme that I enjoy. However, I don't like thrillers, so I did pick it up with some trepidation, this is one that's been on my shelf for quite a while, and that's part of why I really put it off, because I was like, oh, I don't really want to read a thriller. And I think that, I mean, I think I was right. I don't enjoy thrillers. I think the concept for this is kind of interesting, but I just didn't really enjoy it. Also, while reading this, it very much reads like an action movie to me. Especially there's like a very specific kind of action movie where it's like man has to find his like lost or abducted like wife or fiance or girlfriend or daughter, like some woman in his life has like disappeared or been taken, and he has to like track her down and save her. That's kind of what this is like. I don't really like action movies. I don't really watch them, but I can see why this would appeal to a lot of people. I just got kind of bored, so I DNF'd. And then the last one in September was Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer. This is a recent release that is a YA fantasy that's sort of like, it's forest fantasy essentially is why I wanted to read this. It is kind of like a gender swapped Beauty and the Beast, but like the Beast character is a tree person. And I honestly don't remember too much about this. How far into this did I get? I got about 70 pages in. It took me a really long time to just get 70 pages into this. The writing style just wasn't flowing for me. There were a lot of things that just like didn't match like what she was telling us versus what was actually like happening. But most of all, I just kind of got bored with this. I forgot that I was reading it for a while, and then I didn't feel like picking it back up again once I remembered, so that's why I DNF'd it. The first book that I DNF'd in October, both of these are kind of ones that I just went like, not for me. So the first one was Thief's Magic by Trudy Canavan. I don't know, I really didn't get far into this. Did I? Oh, I took out my bookmark, so I can't even tell you how far I got in. Oh, no, wait, is it in there? Did I see it? Yes. I got 4 chapters in, which was about 50 pages. And like, I don't know. Like, the vibe wasn't for me. I didn't like the setting. I don't even really remember what this was about. I think there are 2 main characters. One of them is a young man who is at like a university, and they essentially go to like other countries and steal artifacts from other countries and bring them back to the university. And in one of these expeditions, he finds a magical book that can speak to him. And that is a concept that sounds very interesting to me, but I don't know, there's just something about the book that I just wasn't into it. I think there's another perspective following a girl who is like in a alternate world, but I didn't get that far because the way the book is set up is it's in like sections where you get like a large chunk that is just following one character and then a large chunk that's just following the other character. I never got to her chunk because I didn't like read that far. Anyway, I don't have a very good reason for DNFing this, but I did. And then the other one that I DNF'd in October was The City of Dreaming Books by Walter Moores. This This, I believe, is about a dinosaur who inherits a manuscript which he reads and then wants to find out where it came from. And so he goes to the city of dreaming books, which is this magical book city, and then gets sucked into the like nefarious underbelly of this book city, which sounds very strange and very fun. But again, it just is one that I started reading and I was like, the vibe of this is just not for me, so I DNF'd it. All right, then we're finally on to my November DNFs. So the first one that I DNF'd in November was Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor. This is an adult sci-fi that is set in post-apocalyptic Africa. In this, we're following a girl who has this special power that she is able to enter the spirit realm, but while she is there, she finds out that there is somebody who is trying to kill her, and she doesn't know exactly who it is at first, and so she's trying to figure that out, but she also has to kind of figure out how to survive because she isn't really accepted within her community and kind of lives on the outskirts of her community as well. So I had started this, I think last year actually. I got about 100 pages into it and put it down because I wasn't like in the mood for it. I picked it back up in November, started reading it again. I kind of decided that it just wasn't really for me. I think it is well written. I have read and enjoyed other things from this author, which is part of why it was kind of disappointing to DNF this one, because I really wanted to just like love everything that she's written. But I don't know, I think that the other books that I have liked from Nnedi Okorafor have been novellas, so this might just be an author for me that like I like her short fiction and novellas, and that a full-length novel just may not be my thing. Or maybe it's just this one specifically. I don't really know, but I definitely am going to be checking out more things from her because I have enjoyed other things that she's written, but I'll probably be focusing more on when she puts out like novellas and other like short fiction kind of things. The next book that I DNF'd in November was She Who Became the Sun by Shelley Parker Chan. This is another recent release. In this we're following our main character, who is really struggling to survive. There's a famine and their family is starving, but they receive a prophecy that her older brother is going to is like destined for greatness and that his name will be remembered, but that our main character has no future or no like destiny and will be forgotten. But then her brother dies and she takes his name and essentially takes his destiny, and for a while goes and lives in a monastery and then eventually gets involved in a war, and that is how, they're going to make their name. And in this, I got about I got a little bit further than that. I got maybe like almost halfway through. I got almost 200 pages into this book. I had started this a couple months ago, got a quarter of the way in, and then put it down because the first quarter of the book is following kind of the main character struggling to survive and then living at the monastery, and then at the end of that first quarter is when it kind of flips to being more about the war. We get some other perspectives and it becomes kind of more like a military fantasy, and I don't really like military fantasy. So I put it down at the time, picked it back up in November, decided to try it as an audiobook to see if that would like help me move forward, and I got a little bit farther, but I still just wasn't really enjoying it. I think that there were a couple of reasons for me. One is that it kind of became a military fantasy. I'm not really into military fantasy. If it had just been about like living at this monastery, I would have been totally into that and I probably would have enjoyed the book a lot more. But the military aspect, I just was not really enjoying. There also was this real feeling of distance from the characters, which is something that I always you know, have a hard time with. I like to feel like very, very close to the characters. And this definitely had like a real distance from them. But also, I just didn't find the character motivations very compelling. And I don't think that I think it's a personal preference, because our main character is very much a survivor, and I appreciate that in a character. But they also, like, their main motivation is this, like, striving for destiny and power, and this determination to, like, achieve this destiny that they believe they are owed. And that's not a compelling motivation to me. So I just ended up feeling very disconnected from this and DNF'd it. And then the last book that I DNF'd in November was The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, which I know will be very disappointing to some of you, because I know this is a very well-loved book. This is about a band of thieves. They get into hijinks and heisty kind of things, and I don't know, they get involved in something, they get in over their heads in this. It's not a very good explanation of what the book is about. But okay, the reason that I initially wanted to read this is, one, because everybody talks about this and like loves it, and they talk about how amazing the characters are, and there's like this amazing friendship and found family and all of this. And I just, like, I don't get it. And I don't know why. Like, that was the thing. Okay, I've said this before. I got 100 pages into this and I put it down like months ago. Because I was like, where are these amazing characters? But then I heard from multiple people that the book really takes off about 150 pages in. Like, after 100 to 150 pages. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna get to at least like 200 pages and see how I feel about it. I got to 266, so I got about halfway into the book and I still just like don't care about these characters. I'm not interested in them. I feel like I barely know them, and I don't feel like their relationships are very interesting or well developed, or even like, I just don't even feel like I'm not like intrigued to see how these relationships develop. And like, I know that I'm sure like as the book goes on and like as you get into the series, it's like you get more, but I feel like by halfway into the book I should have at least some inkling of caring about these characters and their friendship or relationship or anything, and I just don't. I feel like I barely spent any time with the characters themselves. I don't know anything really about them. I just feel like so much of the book has spent time focusing on like the thieving aspects of it, like explaining in detail why they are so much smarter than everybody else and they're so good at what they do. And then also explaining in excessive detail what the world looks like. I just feel like there was way too much description in detail about the things that I didn't care about, that was just like, what does this place look like? What is going on with, like, I don't know, who doesn't like who, and who is manipulating what, and all of this, which is like important, but there was like too much detail, and it was very just like the narration would just tell you. It was very much just like info dumped. The narration goes like, here's a bunch of information about the world and like the politics and who is involved in what. And that's just not an interesting way to learn about the world. And there just wasn't enough about the things that I wanted to care about, like the characters. And I also felt like most of their relationship between like the two main friends in it was like, we got a little bit of it in the flashbacks, which I'm sure would have been more fleshed out through other flashbacks and stuff as I read on, but I didn't care enough to do that. But also, I felt like most of their friendship was just the narration telling you like, and they were best friends, and they would do anything for each other, and they were best friends. And I'm like, that doesn't do anything for me. I don't know. I just was very frustrated. And I really, really wanted to love this. But I got to a point where I just was like, I was dreading picking it up, so I decided to DNF it. And I'm very disappointed because I really wanted to love it. Anyways, that is the last book that I DNF'd in November. Let me know, did you also dislike any of these books? So we can commiserate in the comments. Or is there just some other book that you have recently DNF'd? I would love to know. Thank you all for watching, and until next time, bye.